thank you everyone for joining us today as we continue to look into the things that will strengthen us and help us as we look to conquer today. Today, we're very privileged to have a guest with us, and so good to have Jeff Mallory with us today.
Thank you.
Him and his wife are missionaries in the Philippines, and they are our friends. They are great encouragers, but these are people who have given their lives to the work of the kingdom, of building others, seeing others strengthened, helping others see their calling and their purpose, and ultimately to sharing the hope of the gospel of Jesus Christ. They have a foundation called Hope Village International, where they are looking to help the less fortunate, the orphans of the Philippines, and they're doing a tremendous thing. They're building an orphanage. And so today, really glad to have you with us. I want to just ask you a couple of questions, and I want you to feel free to just kind of share your heart, give us insight. But the first question that I really want to ask you is where you currently are in your ministry, what that looks like, the people you're involved with, and what it is you're doing in the kingdom today with that ministry. So thanks again for being here.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be here. And we always love coming to Parkway and being able to be with our friends, the Peters. So where we are in our ministry, for so long, and this may not be exactly what you're asking, but for so long, it was just trying to find out what ministry is. And when you start your ministry, you try to copy. You see what others are doing, and you think that's ministry. And there's nothing wrong with starting out a ministry that way. But I think where we are now in our ministry is we have an identity. We are more confident in who we are, and we're not so much trying to be somebody else or follow the pattern that you see somebody else, because the motions of ministry is not really ministry. Ministry flows from your identity, from who you are.
Excellent.
And we've finally gotten to the point now, I think, that we're confident in who we are. And when you find that confidence, you're able to flow more in the Spirit, because you're not just trying to mimic or be somebody else. You're really yourself.
Right.
And so when the Spirit begins to lead you, you can go with it.
Right.
And I think we're more in that mature stage. We're not there yet. We've got a long ways to go, but it's definitely a difference in ministry.
Yeah.
To know who you are, have your own identity. But what we do is we travel. My wife and I have now traveled. It's been almost 6 years, and we haven't had a home in those 6 years. We spend most of the time on the road, either here or in the Philippines, and it's a great life. It's a life you have to be called for. It's not something that would be easy for most people, but if God calls you to do it, whatever God calls you to do, He knows that you're able to do it.
Right. Gives you the grace.
He gives you the grace, and we enjoy it. So we do a lot of humanitarian things during the day when we're in country in the Philippines, and then at nights we do, and weekends it's a lot of ministry. So we live pretty busy lives, and we love it.
Yeah. So a couple of things that you said there that I think would be very advantageous for us just to talk about for a second is the mimicking of others. So in the book of Ephesians, the Apostle Paul says something to the believers there at Ephesus, and he says, "Be therefore imitators of God as little children," which I think is so awesome that you bring that up, that our theme as a congregation for 2024 is imitate. And the reason why that scripture flows is not because I'm a great Bible quizzer or a theologian. It just so happens that's the scripture God gave me
Wow.
for that theme. And your statement that maybe we're not mimicking or following other people, that is exactly what we do, and it's not wrong.
Right.
Our kids, right? They mimic our
Mm-hmm.
walk, our mannerisms. But when we get into a place of spiritual maturity where we begin to realize our own identity in Christ, we are members in particular, fitly framed together. We can allow God to move through us in those ways, but that is never a place of pride. There's
Right.
still a measure of submission that's involved. Um,
Absolutely.
Tell me about when did you, if you can even pinpoint this, but when do you feel like you moved into this place where it was like, oh, this is who we're supposed to be, and able to do that with humility?
Right. I think with us, it was a time when we were just exhausted by the. It's not really. I guess it is competition. You, when you're trying to be somebody that's not you,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of contention that can come with that. Competitiveness among each other, comparing yourselves among each other. I'm a better version of him than you are, that sort of thing. I think it finally, our situation, everything changed in our life when we had the health scare, where you realize life is short. And I did a lot of soul searching and realized, no, I don't want to be somebody else.
Yeah, right.
God made me, every fingerprint is unique, every iris is unique, every ministry should be unique, and it's
Mm-hmm.
fine.
Right.
And maybe I don't do things like somebody else, and it's not pride, you're right. It's just recognizing that we're unique.
Yeah. Yeah.
And God made us that way because we have a mission that nobody else has. It's our mission.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a time where you can have boldness without pride.
Right. When we look at that, I hear oftentimes, be yourself because you're the only one that can be you, right?
Right.
Don't try to be somebody else because that's already taken. And when you talk about this contention and competitiveness, it is because oftentimes we're vying or contending with one another for a spot that's already filled.
Right.
When God's saying, I called you, I fit you for a specific, unique, as you said, place, ministry, expression of what God is in our world. And so that's powerful. And I wish we all could get that. But you said, we kind of came to this realization when we were tired.
Yeah.
We talk a lot today about mental health and self-care, and I think all that stuff's important, but the reality is sometimes we focus so much on self-care and personal things that we forget that really that true refreshing comes from being settled in Christ and having a realization of who we are in Him.
Right.
And so most of us come to this place of awareness because we wore ourselves out to where we finally said, okay, God, I don't know what to do. What do you want me to do? What a
Right.
novel idea to ask God that question. I wish I would have asked that question a long time ago and actually listened for the answer. So in getting to this place of being tired, that leads to something else I wanted to ask you about because you folks are busy. You mentioned not having a home. This isn't because they don't want a home. It's not because they don't want a place to call their own, but they've invested themselves into the work of the ministry that's one more distraction. Now, someday they may have a home, but how do you, in the midst of living out of a suitcase, so to speak, how do you protect against burnout and making sure that you're getting rest in the daily minutia that happens? What do you do? Talk to us a little bit about what that looks like for you.
burnout comes, I believe, when you it's normal. It's part of life.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus got away
Mm-hmm.
to probably avoid burnout. But I think you have to enjoy what you do.
Yeah.
And the problem when we are doing everything we do by duty, we're serving God because of duty. Duty can burn you out just about as fast as anything.
So in other words, duty can make you feel like duty.
Exactly.
That's deep. You'll get that maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you don't really enjoy what you're doing, and then you have to go back and say, why don't I?
Right, right.
What worldview do I have? What's my value systems? Why am I doing? What is my motive for doing what I do? And it is almost always perspective that needs to change.
So good.
And one thing about enjoying what you do is you have to realize that you're not doing it for anybody but God.
And that's a spiritual maturity thing.
And that's part of growing up.
Yeah, right.
That's part of I am who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And just to go back to that, to say something to clarify, when you are unique, you're not independent.
Right, right.
We're supposed to be connected. We're supposed to fit.
Yes, sir.
But you don't fit by being a copy. You fit by being you, but still you're submitted in the body.
Yeah, right.
You have to have your place.
Mm-hmm.
Uniqueness and independence is worthless.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to be connected. But finding joy, finding gratitude, peace,
Yeah.
things like that, and that comes from everything I do. I consider heaven's point of view.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not doing what I do. And we were on staff at a church, a great church, and they treated us so well. We had an income. Everything was taken care of for us. But when ministry is a job, you can get burned out.
Yes, sir.
Because then you're looking at the clock.
Mm-hmm.
When am I supposed to be there? I'm only going to get there when it's, I'm paid to be there.
Right.
And when I'm done with that clock is done, I'm out of there. And it does take some of the joy out of ministry, and burnout can come. So one thing we do is we try to have fun. And there's nothing wrong with having fun. People
We
think
have
when
fun.
they're spiritual.
These are fun people.
When you're spiritual, you're too spiritual to have fun. Man, you have to know how to laugh.
Yes, sir.
Have a good time, and be serious when you have to be serious, but have a good time when you're doing it, you know.
Right.
And ministry should be fun. Living for God should be fun. Be creative. Find ways in your day to do things that you enjoy.
Right.
I think somebody said the best vocation is to make your vocation a vacation, where you actually love what you do.
Right. Right.
Maybe if you don't love what you do, that's your emotions telling you that you're not in the right ministry, and find something else,
Mm-hmm. An elder once said to me, and he said, I can't necessarily give you Bible for this. He said, but there are times that the Spirit brings something like holy discontentment to us, because it's if we didn't have that, we would settle, and we would live lives of just simply routine without fulfillment, right? And so when what you're doing is your passion, you feel fulfilled, you feel energized.
Exactly.
There are times, though, that in the ministry, and I know even with you doing what you're passionate about, there's certain aspects of it that you have to do, and you may not be as passionate about it.
Right.
But those are the things that come with that. Outside of that, it's the old punch the clock mentality. And when it becomes that, we do, like you said, we have to really do some soul searching and say, God, why is it I feel this way?
Right.
We have something here at Parkway, and we call it First Steps, but we tell people before you take your next step. So if you've been serving, if you've been ministering for a long time, and you're feeling that lack of passion, before you make your next step, go back to first step.
Right.
Because again, everything has the foundation, right?
Right.
So I think that uniqueness, making sure that we're fitting together, so very, very important. Was there anything else you wanted to say with that?
Yeah. So you have to know if what you're feeling is burnout or something else.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sometimes God is wanting to take you higher, or there's an adjustment coming to your life, and you've got all these feelings. I heard somebody say one time that when God wants to take you to another level, sometimes he'll attach an angel from a higher level to come alongside you, and it feels unusual to you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Things just feel off,
Right.
and but you're going to another level, and it's different. And so you have to learn why you feel what you feel, and search after God. God, are you trying to get me to go to a higher level than you?
Yeah, it's good.
You know,
Right.
it's not really burnout.
So in the Old Testament, when the Ark of the Covenant was before the Hebrews, God set a specific distance between that ark and the beginning of the people, and it wasn't 10 feet. But it was not 100 yards, but if I remember right, it was like miles. And the reason was so that when the ark moved, not just one person knew God was changing direction, but everybody saw it. And when you talk about God attaching potentially, right, an angel from another dimension to you, I think the thing that we forget sometimes is the enemy also sees your direction oftentimes
Right.
before you see it, because again, it's spiritual in nature. And I do believe that just as God would attach an angel from another dimension, the enemy will attack us not from our present location, but he'll attack us as though we are at our destination
Right.
to dissuade us from moving in that. And so when you say it don't feel right, sometimes it feels like all hell broke loose in our life, and we're saying, I've been faithful, or maybe I need to just stop. Maybe I'm doing too much. And I think your assessment of, we have to realize, is this burnout
Right.
or that discontentment, God pulling us, trying to move us? How would you say for yourself, have you come to recognize, or what are some of the things that you do to recognize, hey, this is burnout potentially coming, I'm weary, or that it's God? And I know that I don't want you to feel like you got to over spiritualize that, because I know sometimes everybody's going to have their own, but how do you personally start to go through that process? What is this that's happening in my life?
Well, I in my life I've had to go through a lot of challenges,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm a fighter, and I'll get into a situation where there is a lot of resistance, and my default is just I'm fighting, right? And that's not a bad mentality to have, but sometimes you wear yourself out because you're trying to fight something in the spirit with the flesh,
Yeah, right.
with your strength, your own personal strength. And sometimes the best fight is to let God be God and do what he does. One way that I try to find what season I'm in, because seasons are different too.
Right.
You know, there's harvest, then there's plowing.
Mm-hmm.
They're not the same, but they're all part of the same process.
Yes, sir.
You got to know what season you're in and be faithful in that season.
Mm-hmm.
But I have people in my life that I trust, people that are
Right.
wise, and you're one
Right.
of them. And when I'm going through something, I'm not shy to talk about it,
Right, right.
and then you get feedback. And I find God speaks to me a lot through people like that, that help me. Sometimes I can't see myself the way I should because I'm me,
Yeah, right.
But somebody outside of me can look at me and go, "Oh, well, this is the deal." They diagnose it,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And so I do rely on other people. And then of course through prayer,
Right.
God, before I get mad at somebody else for coming against me or this situation or whatnot. Maybe it's me.
Yeah.
Self-introspection. And through that process, I think I've been able to kind of get a pattern that I follow.
Yeah. So one of the things that the New Testament scriptures talk about really is these are the things that we war against, right? We know the lust of the eye, the lust of the flesh, the pride of life, things of that nature. But we know that some of the other aspects of warfare that we go into is the flesh, the world, and then ultimately the enemy. And there are times that when we feel these battles raging, oftentimes, and you've been around the church and the church community for a very long time, we want to immediately blame the devil.
Right.
I mean, they wrote songs about it, I'm running for my life, and people would stand up and say, the devil's been chasing me all week, and I barely made it in here.
Right.
And every wise old pastor would be looking at that person and thinking, devil don't have to do anything because you've been doing his job really good for him.
Exactly.
And so with that, I think you saying self-introspection, boy, but again, that's a sign of maturity, right? We're not deflecting away responsibility. We're saying, this is something God gave me. What is the first thing I ought to look at? And it ought to be me.
Right.
And again, that's that imitation. That's that taking a look in the Word and in prayer, etc. I will just say this. Jeff mentioned having voices in his life, and I'm humbled that he would even say that I'm one of those voices he counts in that list, but I only say that for this reason. You and I have had conversations, and those are the kinds of conversations, one, that I appreciate, because you're not asking me to diagnose the problem. You're not asking me to be your pastor, and you're not asking me so that you can say, well, I already know that. It's because I just need to hear. Maybe I need to vocalize so that then there can be a prompting of the Spirit for greater clarity.
Right.
And I think we all, we desperately need that.
We need that because the message in my head, as long as it's just played in my head, sounds one way. But as soon as I speak it to you, I hear it through your ears, so to speak. You may not even say anything. But while I'm talking to you, I'm getting this.
I've had those
I
moments.
know what he thinks about what I'm saying.
It sounded a lot better in here.
Yeah, that seemed like I should have been really upset about that. But now that I'm saying it, that's not the problem. I was the problem.
Yeah,
and
right.
It's just that healthy ability to express and in a multitude of counsel, there's safety, right? And so to me, that's a huge part of the process.
Yeah. So, having these relationships like we have and we have with other people, there are times we can be really hurt by those relationships. Another scriptural principle is the greatest hurts that I receive are those of my friends. And it's because we're the most vulnerable with them, etc.
Right.
Talk me through even in those moments, right? Because we're talking to people today who just want to honor God more with their lives, want to fulfill the call of God on their lives. Maybe we're even talking to people just from a leadership perspective, whether it's in the church or outside of the church. But there are people we work in partnership with because they get so comfortable with us that they can share with us in manners that we have to be careful we don't pick up an offense from them. How do you also guard against that? Is it just, now I got to go talk to somebody and realize I'm just sucking my thumb with this, and that was, because that's real. How do you navigate that?
Well, I think it's good to be challenged, and you don't like it when it's happening, but I've actually been able to look back now enough to see that some people who challenged me that I didn't like in the moment were beneficial.
Yeah, right.
I like to consider myself as a bridge builder, I had to learn that during a lonely time in my life where I needed a friend, and friends weren't beating my door down.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, if you want a friend, you have to make a friend,
Yes, sir. That's good.
and you have to go out and find somebody. And in my life, and now I tell younger ministers too, I say, go find somebody that you respect, even if you don't know them, and make them your friend.
Yeah.
And you have to look at it as they want to be your friend. You can't listen to that little voice in your head that says, "Oh, they don't want to be my friend." You know, to make a friend is work.
Yes, sir.
To build a bridge is work.
Yes, sir.
And I
Yes,
always tell
sir.
people, don't burn bridges either.
Right.
You know, there may be a situation that a friend has hurt you, and for a period of time, the drawbridge comes up. It's like, I'm not walking across that bridge for a little bit. But don't burn that bridge, because time has a way of healing.
Right, right, right.
And you may need that friend down the road. To me, friends are one of my biggest ways to stay charged, to stay active in the ministry. And if you're not a bridge builder and you're not somebody that goes actively seeking quality friends that can speak into your life, you can get kind of to a point where you think, well, everybody's just kind of goofy, you know, and you can get jaded. Attitude can get bad. Your spirit can go septic. But there are some really good people out there.
Right.
And if you can attach yourself to some people that nourish you, that feed your spirit, you know, that challenge you. I've got friends that they'll send me a message, buy this book.
Yeah.
You need to read this book.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, I'm pretty busy, but okay, I'll buy that book. And it speaks to me, because God uses people in your life, and he uses the good and the bad.
Yes, sir.
You know.
Yeah.
But I like to, I count my friends as one of my greatest resources in my own ministry. And so while you're unique and you're not trying to copy somebody, you better have good friends.
Yeah.
They hold you accountable. They inspire you. You know, they help you with wisdom and clarity.
So, one of the things that I feel like I'm hearing today is in this, you know, looking at what do I do today to successfully position myself for really where God has taken me. And you know, we talk about our daily routines, our habits, right? Time in the Word, time in prayer, connecting with the body of Christ, rest, exercise, you know, all of these things that come into play. Journaling, I talk about journaling a lot because I think it's a way to look into vision. It's a way to dream. How often do you, because you are a visionary, how often do you as a visionary mull over the vision God has given you for the future? How often are you thinking about that?
So I like to dream. I have an active dream life, an active imagination. And I love thinking outside the box and big. I spend a lot of time thinking that way. And I spend a lot of time writing. Writing has become my outlet. There's some conversations that you need to express, but you don't need to have anybody else hear. You know?
They don't need to know how crazy, how angry, how big. Yeah, I got you.
I feel that the book of Psalms probably could have been 1,000,000 chapters if
Probably.
we got everything that David wrote, but it's just what made it in the book. But I use that as my way to express feelings, dreams, visions, and then I go back. One thing about vision is vision with fear goes nowhere.
Yeah, that's right. That's
And so if you deal with your fear and you're able to have visions, you take steps of faith, because if God puts it in your heart, he has a plan. He knows how it's going to work, and he chose you.
Right.
And so that way we've been able to start things that we probably never would have started, attempt things we would have never attempted. You just find a way to swallow that fear and take a step, you know, get out of the boat, walk on water, whatever it may be.
Yeah. So a couple things there. The vision and the timing are two different things.
Right.
And they're both very important.
Right.
And I would say they're both specific. And they have to come together properly. I think a lot of times where people get frustrated is they get a vision, and they get the timing wrong. And so as a result, the longer you or the greater clarity you get with timing, the more clear the vision even becomes.
Right.
So, what have you experienced with good vision, bad timing?
Oh, now talk about burnout. That'll wear you out.
Oh, yeah.
If you know God spoke to you, but every door is closed in that direction, and every attack is coming against you, and all you're seeing is no, it can wear you out.
It can wear you out.
I had a dream from God, a vision from God. I knew it was God. And for 14 years, I couldn't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not careful, your spirit can go septic.
Right.
Because then you start blaming everybody, and
Mm-hmm.
even looking at God, why'd you give me that, and then not let
Mm-hmm.
me do it. But timing is so important.
Right.
And now I've got perspective on that, because you look back, and now we're in that dream that I was dreaming years ago, and the delay means nothing now,
Right.
because it's all happening, it's all being fulfilled, and I'm just glad that we didn't lose out
Right. Right.
during that time when the doors were closed, because it just wasn't the right time. Maybe
Yeah.
we weren't even ready.
Well, and I think now you would say, I'm thankful for the delay,
Exactly.
because you see the positioning and the advantaging of the delay to a certain degree.
Right.
You look at, you were mentioning David, and God gave David vision
Right.
for the building of the temple,
Right.
but the timing would not happen in his life.
Right.
Yet he didn't become jaded and cynical. He began to gather that it would come to pass. And so I think that's really important as well. Years ago, I worked for a company, and it was a pharmaceutical company, and they had these super clean rooms, right? You had to wear special clothing over your clothing, and you had to go through static machines, so there was no static. But one of the things that I felt God really impressed on me all those years ago that I never understood until, I would say, probably in the last 3 to 5 years, was when you walked in, there was something called an airlock. You walked through a door, and before the next door ever opened, the door behind you had to be closed, and the pressure in that room had to be at the same pressure as the next room.
Mm-hmm.
Or it had to be a negative pressure, so nothing went into that room. And I think so many times what we fail to realize is when we're running into closed doors, rather than arguing with God, rather than getting an attitude, is to realize God is about to transition us to something that's completely different or a greater dimension, but we got to realize He's got us here for a reason.
Right.
And then find joy in that as well, So that's some good stuff there. I want to say, Jeff, thank you for being here. I feel like I could talk to you for hours, and oftentimes we do.
We do.
And I also want to say this. You are that friend that I can also bounce things off and have, and you're somebody that brings me great joy. And so to our listeners, to our viewers, remember that in the process of conquering today, become as intentional as you can about the things you're doing in your life, but also the people that you allow into your life. Just because people come into your life, realize it goes back to what Jeff said earlier. There are dimensions that God is moving us through. And some people God brings, yes, into your life, but he only brings them in for a season
Right.
because they were never intended to go with you where you're going. And so I realize that may shift our relationships at times, but there are some people who are to be attached to you for a significant part of your journey. And those people should encourage you. They should bring you joy. They might poke you in the forehead once in a while and say, hey, are you sure about that?
Right.
But at the end of the day, they're there to support you. So any closing words that you would have for those that have subscribed to our podcast, anybody that's happened along, anything you'd want to share before we wrap this up?
Well, the only thing I would add is, I said you got to enjoy what you do. I feel to say this, that sometimes you won't,
Yeah.
and it's okay, but it's for a season.
Yeah.
I just heard a preacher preach about Jesus turning water into wine. They wanted wine, but what they got was water,
Yeah.
and they had to carry water.
Mm-hmm.
And they were, I don't know, a couple thousand pounds. They were very heavy. And so they were like, why am I carrying water when I want wine? Well, sometimes waiting for your miracle or waiting to get to the next level, sometimes it is a little bit of a struggle. Sometimes you got to walk through the valley before you fight that giant, and you're all alone. But if you keep going, weeping may endure for the night, but joy comes in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
So ministry is all of those things.
Yes, sir.
And if you keep going, you'll find your joy. You'll get your peace back.
Yeah.
It's all part of that journey.
That's excellent. It is really something we could talk a lot more about, and that is the aspect of faith. That's exactly what it is in those moments of questions. I have faith that he is faithful, that the thing he began in me, he is also able to perform. And so if I were to give you something coming out of today, go read Hebrews chapter 11. These are people who in the midst of process, having received a word from the Lord, having received a vision, having made commitments to God, through great trial, adversity, suffering, they did exactly what he just said. They stayed faithful because they knew in whom they had believed. And so how do you conquer today? Don't forget who you serve. Don't forget who your God is. And remember, you are victorious through him. Let's make sure we remain in him. God bless you. We look forward to connecting with you again. And Jeff, again, thanks for being a part of
Thank you
this
for
episode.
having me.
Absolutely. God bless you. God bless you all. We'll talk to you soon.
God bless you.